Greetings and salutations, my friends. Wow, this one's whew, talk about a movie. Woo. SARDAR UDHAM is a 2021 film. It's from last year. An Oscar-worthy caliber film. Deep and heavy. And I'm going to talk to you about the film, what we like, what I don't like. Maybe even kind of touch on a little bit on why U.S. audiences didn't care for this one, or maybe even a little bit on why the Oscars didn't embrace this one. I know people have said a lot of stuff to me online as they recommended this film. It is heavy. I'm so glad I got a chance to watch this. I've learned so much about history and events in history that I did not know. I also learned that Vicky Kaushal is an amazing actor. It is his film. It is his film. And from start to finish, it's just, he's phenomenal. So this has to do with a massacre in 1919. I apologize for names that I say wrong, or if I get little pieces wrong. I assure you I'm going to try to do the best I can to communicate my perspective on this. I know this is a very heated and kind of, I want to say, I'll say political, but I don't mean as much politics. I just mean divisive situation. It's a difficult topic because of what happened. It's called the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. Basically, the Brits at the time were dealing with they viewed India as a bunch of savages, and Gandhi's protest was working. So what they did was they tried to approach this by dealing with it in very harsh manners. And they had curfews. If you were out past 8 p.m. curfew, you could get shot, because they put this thing in it called the Rollat Act. And you couldn't gather with more than like 4 people. You couldn't have processions. You had the permission to even leave a city if you could leave a city. Anyway, so this massive protest, peaceful protest. And by peaceful, I mean they're literally like sitting there. It was everybody. It was old, young, different genders, all the different religions. So Hindus and Muslims, Christians, Sikhs, anyone that was there. And there's this Brigadier General Dyer. And he's the one that leads this brigade in there and basically blocks all of the exits. They can't get out. And it's crazy, just murdering probably between 1,500 and 2,000 people. And the order comes from someone above named Michael O'Dwyer. And the movie centers around this man, Udham Singh, who is responsible for killing O'Dwyer. So I don't know if you want spoilers or not, but I don't mince word about spoilers. I just jump right to it, especially with a movie that's older like this. So the movie deals with him getting out of prison, and we have some flash forwards and flashbacks as we kind of navigate through the timeline of his life and what's actually happening. Because it starts with him getting out of jail. And basically, he has no desire to live amongst the people and go back to a normal life. He is literally like right back at it. He's shaving and trying to evade the police. He's moving through Afghanistan and into the Soviet Union. He visits his cousin briefly, and there's a comment about, why don't you settle down? And it's like, I don't want to hear any of that. So I will say that there's a fascinating line as he evades the police, because it takes literally like a week for them to even let the officials know that he's gone. And I thought that was really kind of a cool little plot point to include, because with our world of surveillance and all things going on, we lose sight of how things would work. By the time that you're looking for someone, they've had a week to move somewhere else. It's crazy. So anyway, they put out wanted posters. Scotland Yard had been involved and that kind of thing. And you move through history where it's taking him forever. This is like not some like little quick thing. This is like years that it's going on. This whole timeline of his life, this massive amount of different events of where he is. And I didn't do enough history, dive deep enough to see the stuff I'm finding is all fact checking true. but I'm not saying that there's not more to the story that I'm unaware of. So I apologize if I misspeak, but he moves to the Soviet Union to basically use their network as a way to help him get back to London. And of course, once you're arriving in London, you're already like pre-World War II, where they're talking about Mussolini and Adolf on the radio. The resistance groups that he's connected to already know that they're being spied upon. They're running out of money. They tell him he should change his names. He should lay low. He should do all these different things. By the time he gets there, Dyer's already dead. And he starts on his mission to look for O'Dwyer. So the radio is used as a way to give you some exposition and some context of what's happening, because we'll fast forward like years to where the war is actually active, like the actual Germans are attacking London, right? And O'Dwyer is there giving this speech, this racist, crazy speech about the British right to rule India, that they're savages and they'll loot and kill one another if we don't control them. And this is when basically Singh shoots and kills him. And O'Dwyer is praised in the media and his fellow people. He pushed against violence, and this is an act of terrorism. We need to crush any movement that's against the empire. And they're beating on Singh because they're trying to find out what other Indians are involved, what other networks are involved. And you get a flashback again to understand how he was basically in London for like 6 years, like navigating through odd jobs, working as a welder at one point. He had different passports. He would leave the country and come back. And through this interrogation process, you see them just torturing him, beating him. They put, the sharp objects under the fingernails. And the graphic parts here are all off camera. It's all that messing with your head about how much this man went through. And it's really, really intense. They even tracked down like some Russian lady that he interacted with very briefly about her being a communist and trying to tie that a little bit. And he has like a kind of a quaint relationship about with a lady named Eileen who's connected to these groups. And he respects the fact that she's, quote, fighting for equality, but he's like, we don't have equality. We can't even fight for that because we have no grounds to march. You can't even march. So he's not cooperating with any of these things. And you kind of have to go through these flashbacks to kind of piece together, him meeting Eileen, who connects him to the in Ireland, the IRA. There's a great line about Bloody Sunday. It's like, I see Bloody Sunday every day in India. I'm like, ooh, my revolution, your revolution is my revolution. And our enemies are the same. There's a line. I read this line. Let me make sure I get the right line. You're a lamb. I am a lamb. The butcher is the same. I'm like, wow. So right away, I will tell you that a lot of people are going to be very divided and put off by a film that's going to be projecting the British this way. The people don't want to talk about the oppression of the colonial Brits and what they did. And I'm telling you, I fact checked this. The media had tried to keep this stuff quiet. There's stuff that had not come public until the 90s. Can you believe that? It's like 80 years later, we're still learning about what some of the stuff actually happened. This is crazy. Anyway, so there's this back and forth with him moving and navigating through how to get weapons to the right groups to make an impact. You have people saying this is not a good time because of the World War ramping up, and he decides to. One of his tactics was to actually go stake out O'Dwyer and then ultimately work with him, so to speak. And this guy is a flaming racist, a flaming prejudiced, nasty human who thinks he's the smart one. These are beneath him. Actually, I don't think he calls him by his name. He just calls him salesman. Because technically that's what he was doing at the point when he first, met O'Dwyer. He was salesman. Anyway, so they start bringing up a friend from his past, who was like this big sort of a communist sort of icon for him, like someone he really admired and looked up to. They were friends. I will say there was also some good dialogue and discussion about freedoms and breaking away from oppression and those kinds of things. And he says at one point, we don't harbor hate. That's not what's in our heart. We oppose the exploitation of other people. We just want our rights, but we don't want our rights in piecemeal. We don't want this illusion of like some sort of like semi-independence. And he was killed. So he has this flashback to this friend that was this incredible speaker who made this massive impact on his life. And finally, and I don't even know how far we are into the movie at this point, but when he comes with a name, because he refused to give his name, he refuses to play their game. Got to give the man credit for having some cojones and dealing with this nonsense. So my name is Ram Muhammad Singh Azad, which reflects the different religions there, Ram, Muhammad, and Singh. And then Azad is, and again, as far as I understand it, it means free. It's basically a way of saying that we're all united and we just want to be free. Now, I think it's right after this. Let me check my notes. There's a Churchill representation and a King George representation, a little meeting. So it is like a little passing of the buck that they're also as bad as these other leaders. And I didn't fact check a lot of that, and I apologize because I just didn't know their role. Their names didn't come up as much with all this other information that's tied to all of this. I thought the portrayal of Tim Hudson plays the Churchill, and I thought it was horrible. I thought his portrayal. So I don't pile on actors too much because it is sometimes hard to know what the script and the director want, but it did not work at all. I did not like any of this. I didn't like the King George stuff. It was like we had to speed up. This is the two of them basically about speed up the trial. We can't be afford to see it's weak. We may have to reinvent our presence in the quote subcontinent. Ugh, I hated all of this. Now, I'm not saying it's false or true. I'm just saying the way it was plugged in was really heavy-handed. It didn't need to be there. And I think the actors that were delivering it weren't even believable as the figures that they were trying to convey. That whole sequence, we could have easily have just moved past it. I don't think we needed any of that. It didn't help or hurt anything. It just was extra stuff. The press, of course, they're just patsies. They're just doing media spin. He's just some crazed lunatic. It's all about violence, whatever. They bring in this backstory of Singh having worked in this factory, and he had this conflict with this supervisor. But more importantly, he had this girlfriend who's mute. And so anyway, this supervisor's treating people like crap, and they try to make Singh look terrible because he basically gets in the guy's face. And he's like, no. And then when you get the interactions with O'Dwyer, when Singh is there around O'Dwyer, you really, really do see he is just personified evil. He is, and Singh says this at one point. He says this is what he is. He is personified evil. He is literally like the evil that we see you as. That he's representing you. Don't you understand that? I don't hate you if you're just doing your job. I think he says that to the inspector. He goes, but you do understand that this guy that I killed, he represents the worst of the things that your government has done. And the government is doing horrible things to make sure that Singh gets a death penalty, to make sure he is destroyed with any type of press or reputation. They waterboard one of his friends about to get him to sign confessions. They shoot him dead anyway, I believe. Anyway, there's still all these flashbacks. You know what I mean? Being around O'Dwyer and this whole thing about him just being, he's just this crazed lunatic that is still obsessed with what he did and yet is trying to justify it in his own mind. Like, you can't just rise and have a rebellion and get a medal for it. They got what was coming. These ungrateful, heathens, basically. He's just this horrible, horrible man. And he tries to get Singh, because he's the salesman, right? Would you kill one man to save 10? Would you kill 10 to save 100? It's like this moral equivalency that he does in his head, these jumping through hoops in your mind to justify being evil, right? And he talks a lot about fear, that fear is a deterrent. It was the key. And I ended Gandhi's soul force with brute force. Like, you know what? You're an awful, awful human. And the fact that other people were so complicit in covering all of this up and hiding it for decades and not trying to make recourse with the people that were oppressed like this, it's just insane. Anyway, he doesn't kill him because he realizes that if he kills him, it'll be like he killed his boss. It won't bring attention to the massacre. And that's what Singh's ultimately going to do. Like, it's easy to kill the guy, but the point is, if I kill the guy, he can just be some guy that the employee killed. No, he has to do something different. And you have flashbacks to this. You have flashbacks to, he finds the flyer of where he's going to be. You see him prepping his book where he's going to hide the gun in. You have all of that, right? So there's all of these different kinds of things. The court case moves really, really fast. The judge is just as evil. He's like telling the press they can't talk about these things. And it, like I said, it took like 80 years for us to actually get all of this stuff sort of, but I don't know what the term is there. For us in America, it's called declassified. So it's like declassifying the documents so the public can actually see everything. So Singh, again, this is the era of Gandhi. So he goes on a hunger strike. They force feeding, which is this horrible, horrible torture scene, basically. And I tell you what, it is insane. They basically talked about how they were going to destroy the papers and have all this censorship and stuff to basically hide what actually happens. Now, the scene. They shoot for 10 minutes. So they blocked all the exits in this area. Basically, it was like they bottlenecked all of these people there protesting. They're sitting, they stand. They don't know why these soldiers are around. And it is Saving Private Ryan and Hacksaw Ridge. It's graphic. It's shocking, gut-wrenching. Women, children, old, young, wounded, getting a second shot. It's insane. I'm glad I watched it, but I don't know that I can sit through it again. Right? I remember watching Saving Private Ryan. I know how many our family lost family members in that moment, and I felt like I was living something, and I cried in the theater. I broke down in the theater and started crying. And I've been moved like that a couple of times, but this scene, I'm glad I saw it on my phone and I wasn't watching it in a theater, because I'm not sure I probably would have cried. I know I would have cried again. It's that heart-wrenching. It is shocking. And it's even more shocking to know what efforts were made to cover all of this up and hide the horrors, the war crimes that were done against these people. So the story is, he should have been there that day. Udham should have been there. Udham Singh. Sher Singh. And he wasn't. The mute girlfriend was. She gets killed, but he can't find her. He goes out looking. He finds someone alive, so he brings her. Now, he can't take him to the hospital because there's a curfew. He can get shot and killed. And in fact, if any of the soldiers show up in that area and they see him moving around, he's post-curfew. He can be shot and killed. But he finds someone alive, someone that might need water. And he's one by one. And then ultimately he gets a cart. And he is just moving these people. and trying to save as many lives as he can. He is doing this. There's shots where he's literally just falling down, exhausted, trying to gather an ounce of his own strength to search and maybe save another person and hopefully find his precious girl. It is insane. It is insane. So anyway, Singh says this incident has become a footnote in your history. And I was just floored. And I'm like, man, they deleted the footnote. They tried to. Anyway. So this kind of moves on for a while. And there's like the interaction of all of this about making your life meaningful and all that kind of thing at the end, right before he gets hung. And he dies with this little photo in his hand, and there's all these court hearings and little testimonies by O'Dwyer and Dyer and all that nonsense. And O'Dwyer is so evil. Well, they're both evil, but they talk about like there's no mercy. It's like, just want to teach him a lesson. They admit to like they would have used machine guns if they had them. Like it's just off the chain, insane, this movie. And I'm assuming. Oh, first off, again, let me go back and praise this actor, Vicky Kaushal. I apologize if I butcher names. Phenomenal acting. This is an incredible performance. It's a crime how we in the Americans handle our awards. We don't really have the kind of attention for foreign cinema that we should. I don't know if the movie should be a best Oscar film, but he's one of the most amazing performances I've ever seen. It's truly spectacular. Truly a spectacular performance. The direction is amazing. Shujit Sarkar. Again, I'm so sorry if I'm butchering your name. Great care with this film. The scenery, these locations when he was moving through Afghanistan and Russia, all this stuff on site, these different sets, fantastic. In the snow, so there's whole shots where you have these swaths of time, not a lot of dialogue or no dialogue. It's just him performing, and just the looks he's giving, looking in a mirror, looking on this, working on that. It's just truly tremendous. I'll tell you this. A lot of Americans won't watch this film. First, it's long. It is 3 hours long. Right? It's pretty close to it, right around. I don't even think it needed to be 3 hours long. I think there are big segments that we probably could eliminate. We could have knocked it down at least by a half hour. There's stuff there that doesn't help the story much. It's kind of like duplication or just in the out of order things. That's almost too much, because it works for the effect when we get to the actual massacre and reenacting it. But some of the other flashing back, it gets a little complicated and hard to tell sometimes. But most Americans don't want to have this type of experience for things that are American history. In fact, America is so pathetic. Most Americans don't even know history, our own history. And when we have heavy-handed historical biopics or things that are done here, most people don't go see them. And a lot of them don't get nominated. In fact, there are people to this day who haven't watched certain biopics that I think are tremendously good. I think the Jackie Robinson biopic by the late Chadwick Boseman, 42. I think it's a great film. Totally underrated. Is it an Oscar film? Probably not. But it should be something that people should see, because people talk about that piece of history. People refer to this guy, this amazing athlete that broke this race barrier, and people have no context of what they're talking about. We have moments like that in our own country. So if you guys are expecting our audience to embrace this from yours, all I can tell you is that we're going to disappoint you as a society and a culture. As a fan of film and movies, and as a critic, I'm enjoying watching these films. I'm enjoying taking in someone else's treasures And that's how I treat art. It's a treasure to me. And I appreciate the fact that so many of you have spent your time watching a video that I did, commenting, that you would take the time to type out a recommendation. And some of you had made comments or qualifiers to say, well, listen, this one's pretty boring. Or he won't like this one. It's too political. Or he won't understand the politics. I would just ask you to give me a chance. Give me a chance. I can't say I'll like it till I watch it. I'll try to be as honest as I can with you. Sometimes I misspeak. Sometimes I will have things in my notes that I miss or I skipped over or I get wrong or out of order, things like that. Because sometimes, and I will say this a lot with Indian cinema, sometimes something happens early in the film and I don't quite understand it, or I'll have a note, I think this is what this is meaning or whatever. And then later, if it changed, I may not have got my other note updated. I may have messed up my stuff. And I will admit there's a language barrier. I can only appreciate it so much. It will always mean more to you than me because it was done in your native language. It's your culture. It's your history. I'm the outsider. I'm the foreigner who's trying to understand it, to appreciate it. And in this case, I'm a complete noob. I'm totally ignorant of the historical context of this. Like I said, I can only try to relate it to other things in our cinema and our history that have impacted me, I believe, on this level, because the film is tremendous. We nominate 10 films now for an Academy Award. The fact that this film got done, let me double check that. Let me check what a crime this was that it didn't get nominated. And I know people have their stories. They say, oh, no, it was too anti-British, and it was what? Yeah, it was a 2021 release. So I don't know if it's in the 2021 Oscars or the 2022. Let's just do both. Let's just go through the list, and let me explain to you why it's silly to think, yeah, this is insane. So that Oscars was, I didn't hit the right. It said, okay. No, that's only going to show the winners. I need to see the list of all the nominees for that year. Oh, that's this 2020. Okay, so I got to go to the next year. I got to go to the 94th Academy Award. Oh my gosh, this is the last one, is what this would have been. Oh yeah, this was a joke year for an Academy Award. Oh my gosh. No wonder you people were mad. Holy cow, no wonder you guys were upset. This didn't even get, you got bumped. Okay, for those of you at home to understand why people in India are mad that this film did not get recognized, our best picture is a film called Coda. Good luck. Belfast was nominated. I have someone close to me I trust who says they didn't like it. Dune was nominated. I thought was the biggest crime of them all. That film was a beautiful shot, cinematography, special effects film. Did not deserve to be an Oscar. Way overrated. King Richard was nominated. I admitted at the time it was one of the better movies I had seen of the year, but I hadn't seen these other things. Here's the one that gets me. West Side Story was nominated. This derogatory excuse of a remake musical that had Spanish in it without subtitles for the American audience that it was targeted for. Talk about the ultimate of virtue signaling in Hollywood. This shows how corrupt they are. This is all pathetic. For those of you that are overseas, that are watching stuff, please don't take offense. Don't judge all of us by the morons that are in this landscape. I'm looking at least in the foreign film categories to see if they don't even list it. This site doesn't even have all of the categories listed. It has international feature film is Drive My Car, which is a Japanese film, and then Flee, which is Danish. I've heard of that one. Hand of God, which is an Italian film. I don't know what the others are. Norwegian. I don't know what this one is. I don't know. Well, here's the thing. I know I went really long on this review because it's it's one of these things I wish I could get more people to see, but I also have to be honest that I probably wouldn't want to watch this again. And I will be honest, I am so messed up in my head. I would be more likely to watch the massacre scene to keep the trauma fresh to me personally, so I can have a great appreciation of the film as a whole. Because the rest of the journey, it matters. It's fine. It's a little bit long-winded for me. It's performed perfectly. I'm not going to criticize that. And it looks great. But it's that one piece of it that is just the heart and soul of the film and the history that I needed to know and learn. And I appreciate that. So great film. Thanks for recommending. Shocking film. Not for everyone, but I think it's one of those where more folks need to know about it. And I hope people can spread the word. And maybe you disagree, or you like my review, or you say you missed this, you missed that. It's all good. It's all game. I try to respond. I try to learn. Take recommendations, of course, and I'll try to get to them when I can. And thanks to all of you that did recommend this. I did appreciate it, and did had a good time getting through it the best I can. So, again, thanks for everything. I'll talk to you soon. I'm Pops.